Established by the Phoenicians in the 4th century BC, the coastal city of Sabratha was used as a trading post that served as an outlet for trade from Africa. It was later ruled by the Numidian kingdom of Massinissa until Rome rebuilt it in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD. Today, from a distance, it looks like it's endured the violence Libya has witnessed for nearly a decade. But close up are signs of the conflict. The conflict in Libya between the internationally recognized Government of National Accord, or GNA, and warlord Khalifa Haftar's Libyan National Army, the LNA, led to UNESCO to put Sabratha and 4 others on its list of endangered World Heritage Sites. Sabratha was controlled by forces loyal to Haftar during his failed military campaign to capture the capital, but the Tripoli-based government retook the city in April.
Unfortunately, the city of Sabratha has seen several armed conflicts in the last decade. The ruins were hit during the fighting, but thank God there was only minor damage to the theatre.
But now, Sabratha's crown jewel, a 5,000-seat theater, has survived and stands 3 stories tall. Built by the Romans nearly 2,000 years ago, it's a testament to the history and culture this country on the southern shores of the Mediterranean has.
Officials here say thousands of foreign tourists used to come and visit, but the years-long conflict and political divisions have had a devastating impact on the tourism sector.
And of course, there's also the pandemic. For now, besides a few local families, heritage sites like this remain for the most part abandoned, but some still come.
We live in Tripoli. With COVID-19, we're all a bit depressed, so I brought my kids here to see the history of their country and to get some fresh air.
The lack of attention and funding by authorities is clear.
We all hope the fighting will end and we can have security and economic stability in our country. I hope that those in power realise how important developing our historical sites are. It could create jobs and give young men an incentive to leave their weapons behind.
With UN-facilitated talks between the rival sides ongoing, many here hope stability will be achieved, however long that takes. And with that, a new lease of life for Libya's historic sites. Malik, Traina, Jazeera, Sabratha.
Well, we can now speak to Mechtild Rossler. She is the director of UNESCO's World Heritage Centre, and she joins us now from Paris. Mechtild, a little bit of welcome hope there at the end of Malik's report, but speaking at the end of what's been quite the tumultuous year, there's rather a lot to talk through in terms of threats to UNESCO sites. What worries you the most?
At the moment, we have all of the cultural sites in Libya on UNESCO's World Heritage list, on the danger list. So that means we have a continued monitoring. And the last meeting we had with the Libyan authorities was actually in early March 2020, just before we had the lockdown in Paris. And we continued via different tools and Zoom meetings with the authorities towards removing them from the danger list. But that means a lot of efforts from their side. There needs to be coordination, especially at Sabratha, where the theater was damaged during the conflicts. But I think there is hope at the end of the tunnel. We got funding. There is a UNDP project on the site for the rehabilitation. And there is funding also from ALIF and from UNESCO, especially for the management plan and the future recovery of this property.
Mechtild, just taking a bit of a step back here and looking at threats to sites around the world, I see that climate change has now taken the spot at the top of the list of those threats, and we saw those fires on Fraser Island just in the last few weeks. How devastating could this be for other sites around the world, and how soon?
We have a lot of impacts of climate change, and that is also the affecting sites in the Mediterranean region with rising waters and coastal erosion. We have seen more fires, both to cultural properties and to natural sites, like you just mentioned in Australia. We have other impacts of climate change, whether it's droughts or increasing floods, which we had in Sudan, at Meroe Island, and other sites. So we with our data, we have seen that climate change is increasingly a threat, but conflicts, as you just mentioned, is ongoing in the Middle East, Libya, in other areas of the world, also for our natural sites in the Congo.
Well, as we speak, the world is still reeling from this COVID-19 pandemic, and with the huge economic downturn, there have also clearly been cutbacks on what countries are spending their money on. Are there the resources to maintain sites?
I think there should be the resources. There's lots of money when it comes to nominations for new sites, but we would like to see more resources for the conservation of heritage. As you just have heard, it's so important for the identity of people. The parents bring the kids to learn about the history of their country and their culture. So this is a very important part of our joint and shared history around the world. And if we cannot safeguard World Heritage Site, what is left on Earth?
And very lastly, Mathilda, I understand that during this pandemic, smuggling rings have been continuing their operations despite the decreased transport that we've seen. Has there been an uptick in artifacts moving around the world?
I think it's really a problem also with the internet. There are sales on the internet of artifacts, sometimes smuggled from World Heritage Sites. We have seen that also in Syria. They come to the market a couple of years later or immediately on the market. And we work very closely between the World Heritage Convention and the 1970 Convention on illicit trafficking to prevent that. But there's also looting going on, especially in the conflict regions, where I think in Libya, people themselves, the community, prevented looting from some of the archaeological areas, and we are really grateful for that.
Mechtild Rossler there, the director of UNESCO's World Heritage Centre, speaking to us from Paris. Great to have you on, Mechtild. Thanks for being with us here on Al Jazeera.
You're welcome.